That was a song dedicated to the King of Pop, also known as the King of Touching Little Children. This next song is for another follow.
folks, how you doing? Why am I playing a ministry song? That's not what I wanted to do. Alright, hey, it's me, your old pal Big Ugly Jim, and we're going to be watching a documentary tonight, Warrior, the Life of Leonard Peltier. I always thought it was Peltier because I'm Canadian and, you know, we have John Laurie A or Laurie, so I'm slowly figuring out that I was wrong for years and years and years. Hey Abby, how you doing? This is an interesting movie. I grew up in not quite the time that this was going on. I believe time-wise it was happening during my lifetime, but it was certainly not something that I was aware of. It wasn't getting a lot of attention. Am I making noise? I just want to make sure I'm making noise. Although my alarm on my phone just did. Yes, I'm making noise. Okay. I knew about the American Indian movement. I knew about it in the very, you know, you read it or hear about things on the TV kind of thing. So I had a very disjointed view of what AIM was. It was a very good thing. As I grew older and learned stuff, I figured out that I figured out that the world wasn't quite what I expected it to be. What do we have there? That's Bender. How you doing, Bender? It's good to see you, buddy. I always want to say "Okie back," but I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, so I don't want to be like an asshole and say things wrong and look like a dumb honky, which ultimately is exactly what I am. Anyways, Leonard Peltier came onto my radar when I got into punk and rap music. There were a bunch of references to him and his case, and it caused me to dig a little bit deeper into things. And it's one of the first times, around the same time as I learned about like Mumia Abu-Jamal, learning that there's an official story and there's a non-official story, and oftentimes the non-official story is far more accurate, shall we say, than what the government would have you believe. Yeah, that sounded right to me. Haha, I'm definitely no expert. That's the thing is, I have literally said Leonard Peltier for years, and then I watched this video and was like, they kept referring to him as Leonard Peltier, and I was like, maybe they're saying it right and I'm saying it wrong. I know that's crazy talk, but that's probably a thing. Anyways, I really, really liked this movie. I actually pre-screened it earlier, or mid last week, just to make sure, because I was nervous about the potential for it being propaganda. And I certainly don't want to... The purpose of these documentaries is not to expand the state. It is to provide question for... and hopefully dialogue around the things that are going on in our world. So, without further ado, I'm going to switch to my cool browser view and tab over and press play, and we can watch.
My whole case revolves around Native American issues, you know, Native American oppression in the United States. I'm in prison because of Native American oppression.
There is absolutely, I've tried many cases
many murder cases. I have defended murder cases as a defense lawyer. There is absolutely no question in my mind that Leonard Peltier was fairly and justly convicted of the crime of murder, of the two murders of these two agents, and that the sentence was an appropriate one under the set of circumstances.
We hope to let the people in this area know what happened at our trial, and what happened prior to our trial, and what has happened after the trial, to let them know the truth that is going on against the American Indians in this country, by the United States government.
My name is Leonard Peltier. I'm 46 years old. I'm here in Leavenworth, United States Penitentiary, serving 2 life sentences.
I think we should be concerned with Leonard Peltier's case quite apart from the plight of a young man who's spending his life in prison for something he almost certainly did not do. I think that any of us could be there if the political climate were so arranged that we fell afoul of the system in some way. I mentioned in my book that I thought it was the most important case from a historical, economic, and social point of view since Sacco and Vanzetti. It had a lot of the same elements. It also involved the FBI. It was an early triumph of J. Edgar Hoover there.
Well, we're talking about the 1975 time frame. And at the time, I was physically located in Washington, D.C. at headquarters. And my assignment at the time was, I was working what they call the Government Crimes Desk. And as part of that, it encompassed the Crimes on Government Reservation, which would be the Indian Reservation. So therefore, when the 2 agents were murdered at Pine Ridge, I was acutely aware of the activity there and what was going on.
Leonard is a very strong person. I don't know if I could have taken this. He's been in jail now 13 years. He's seen the courts reject him time and time again. He's seen this vile chicanery of the FBI and hiding documents and persecuting him unmercifully, and yet he keeps his spirit.
He's the one who got out of his vehicle with the 2 others and starts shooting at the agents. He's the one who takes them out in the escape. He is the one who ends up in Oregon in another shootout in which one of the agent's guns is found in that vehicle. He is the one who then escapes to Canada. He is the leader of the events that took place that day, and thus he was charged along with others.
Sorry to interrupt. I just watch this guy tell the story and the absolute certainty that he holds, and then listen to the rest of the movie, and just we'll come back at some point. We'll find him on a street corner or something, and we'll just punch him in the nose like 8 or 9 times because he's just a lying piece of shit.
For the crime of murder.
Our cell doors are open at 6 o'clock in the morning. I report to my job at 7 o'clock, which I work in the 2nd floor recreation. We have an art studio up there. We have ceramics and a leather craft room. I usually everyone is assigned to a job here in the federal system. It's something that I've always really wanted to do, and finally here in '85, when I got here in Leavenworth, I decided to just start developing it. I've been painting ever since. My subjects are Indians, naturally, and the statement I'm trying to make right now is basically I want to record my generation of Indian people. A lot of my work are from Indian people that were of my generation, my grandfathers and grandmothers, and that's what I'm really trying to concentrate on right now. I was born in the state of North Dakota. My father's from the Turtle Mountain Chippewa Reservation. The only employment that we had was migrant farm work in the spring and through the summer. My father also received a Army pension from World War II when he was wounded, so that was a little extra that we had there. But my father and I we were pretty close. We got more closer after I came to prison, but we got along quite well.
He really feels strong about this. Really proud what the people's doing for him. He's really got hopes.
My mother's from the Fort Totten Sioux Reservation.
First, if they start to calling him, you're big you Indian, or Indian face, you're not, you shouldn't do that. I wonder what's wrong with what's wrong to be an Indian, huh? I wonder what. If it's so bad, how come God put us on earth to be an Indian?
I remember when we were living up in this log cabin where I grew up with my father. My grandmother was there. I was staying with my grandmother, and this government car pulled up. Even at that time, we were still, Indian people were still very concerned when they seen a government car, a new car coming up. They'd all say, "Here comes a brand new car." And kids would hit for the woods, right? Because they knew something was happening. They never came out for any other reasons. I went to Wapton Indian School in 1953, I believe it was. My grandma couldn't speak English, so they took us to Wapton in a bus. A whole bunch of kids went that year. Lined us all up. They gave us all GI haircuts. Then ran us through the showers, scrubbed us down. And as we came out of the showers and dried off, then they put DDT on us. That began 3 years of a memory of my life that I thought was very, 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 very harsh.
First of all, we're cousins. So his mother, my mother, sisters, and so we're pretty much grew up under our grandma many years, and then years that we weren't with her, we were in boarding schools. He up north, I was down south, Oklahoma area. And so Leonard was pretty much in the same bureaucratic system that I was, which is boarding schools, and then the different type of institutions as a youth, and then...
I was 14 years old and when I first started attending a number of different community meetings that my elders were having. And I basically just started to start paying attention to what they were speaking about, and got myself quite of an education on what was happening. I know that my family was living in real heavy poverty, real high poverty, but as most poor people, they're really quite ashamed of it, of being poor. So I in my mind, I subconsciously believed that my family was the only one on the reservation that was having a hard time. Although I would go to my friends and neighbors and stuff, and or was having just as hard a time.
Really, when I look back, I think I always wanted to be an agent all my life. I studied to be a priest, a Catholic priest, for 4 years, and left the seminary halfway through, had my college degree, and then went into law enforcement. I became a policeman, and I guess maybe always in the back of my mind, I wanted to be an FBI agent, and I saw it as a way to enhance my profession, my career, and I took it very seriously. And lo and behold, I got into the FBI. It was kind of the crowning achievement of my life.
In 1958 and 59, the Eisenhower administration was enforcing the termination policy. There was 3 reservations that were selected to be terminated. The Menominees from Wisconsin, the Klamath Falls from Oregon, Klamath Indians and the Turtle Mountain Chippewas. At that time, there was quite an opposition from Indian people to that not accept termination. We didn't want to terminate our reservations, or our nations is what we call them.
So they relocated Indian people to the cities back in the 50s. And so they were just given a place to stay, given a job, and then turned loose, and that was it. So a lot of them were successful. So a lot of them weren't. A lot of them ended up in institutions. But as a whole, though, most of them got involved in the different Indian struggles.
The U.S. government has made a tremendous mistake in segregating Indians on reservations and giving them cradle-to-grave paternalism through taxpayers' dollars. Every other ethnic group in our society who have come to our shores have been mainstreamed and integrated into society, basically because the American dream is an economic dream, and without being integrated in society, an ethnic group would be denied the economic benefits that being integrated provides.
So I'm gonna be that white guy for a second, and I'm gonna just say this very, I'm assuming very conservative take, although I think realistically treating people like crap is across the board politically. But this take, first off, the idea of the termination of reservations is despicable. I didn't know when I first started watching this. I heard that term and I was like, termination orders, like what the, like bringing in jackboots or whatever, and it's not quite that. You hate this racist. Yeah, termination of reservations is theft. Absolutely. What I quickly dug in and found out that what they were doing was, you had presumably treaties. I don't know if the Americans had treaties or not, but they basically said, yeah, we had this agreement and we wanted to have all of you indigenous people living in your reservations, but we're done paying for that, so we're just gonna not. We're gonna kick you out into the cities and just time to pull yourself up by them bootstraps, as the saying goes. Same happened to I'm assuming Michelle Band by Edmonton. That's grotesque. I know that there was in Canada there was a lot of talk. I mean, partly the Indian Act was partly around reframing what the how indigenous people were treated by government, and that included some sweeping changes to things like reservations. And I think that part of the push behind that was a desire to force that issue and say, you know what, let's just stop having reservations. Yeah, they're not working. We're good. So I think all of that is wholly and completely wrong. I'm not opposed to the idea of mainstream life being available to indigenous people, but we're on their fucking land. We are on their land. We don't get to tell them, okay, it's time to be more like us. That's just stupid. We don't. Canada's, when I was a kid, we were told that Canada was a cultural mosaic, not a melting pot, a mosaic. And a mosaic is a bunch of different things all blending together to make this beautiful tapestry or beautiful image or whatever you want to call it. And that was what I thought, and fuck was I wrong, because this is exactly evidence that we're not about allowing people to be different. We're about allowing people to be different within the confines of what we expect. And when it comes to indigenous people who are living in a more traditional lifestyle, we just aren't having it. So anyways, I'll get back to the movie. I just wanted to say that I really hated this man.
But anyway, they've promised them jobs and homes will be waiting for them when they get there. Nothing. Unfortunately, they didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to get back. Some of them had to take the freight back, even women. See, they wanted to get them all off the reservations. They must have been after something.
If we didn't accept relocation, there would be no social services given to the people, which existed of that time was commodities, and once in a while you get a voucher to buy food and stuff like that.
Let's give them a hand. Let's not give them a handout. And if they get a hand, there are very few people in our society that won't take that hand and take it to its full advantage in terms of job retraining programs and employment opportunities. It's been said that the devil puts idle hands to work, and it's no real surprise that any group of hands that are that idle because of the reservation status and the fact that most of the reservations are far away from where the job opportunities are idle.
And a lot of people, well, you got a lot of people mad, you know, for teasing them. But when he worked, he was a good worker. And another thing, if he stayed at any of his aunts or anybody, he had money, they got half of it for his board and room. And they, like some of these kids nowadays, they wouldn't give you a nickel if you asked him for it. But that basically, that's the way he grew up, you know. The people, I guess he was a foster home, I guess, you know, he'd be self-supporting, you know. And you gotta pay your own way in life. Well, that's the way he was.
Some of the statements made by the women there that in these meetings asking for the men to be warriors and to do something to help resolve the conditions of poverty that was resulting from the termination thing. And she said that her children were at home starving. She wanted some warriors to stand up and do something about this, right? And, you know, as a young man sitting there, 14 years old, I'm thinking, wow, you know, when I grow up, I'm going to do something to help my people.
I mean, it was a crusade. I was trying to stamp out evil in the world, and here I had a nice brass badge that said I was on the side of good and right. And I believe this, and I approached my work as a crusader. Looking back, though, I realize it kind of gave me the permission to go ahead and do anything to these people, lawbreakers, that I wanted to. They were fair game. I was on the side of right, they were on the side of wrong. And the work was fun when I looked at it in that regard.
Well, on government reservation, I think there's 13 different felonies that the FBI had jurisdiction over, and that is everything from theft to rape to murder. So you almost had to operate as a detective bureau on the reservation as opposed to the normal kinds of things that an FBI agent would work. So it was a little different. You had a different approach to your job.
Well, the interest of the FBI is keeping native Indians in check. They realize that after decades and centuries of oppression, a new spirit has emerged among Indian people. That's the activist spirit of the American Indian movement and other Indian groups now which have splintered off or are exemplifying what AIM tried to do.
At that time, I was something like 30, 33 years old. And up to that point in my life, I never had nothing, there was nothing in this society that would allow me to relate to my indigenous background. And when I became aware of the American Indian movement, it allowed me something to identify with as an indigenous person. And it really made me feel good, you know, and that's why I've been following the ways of the American Indian movement, the teachings. To me, it's a spiritual reawakening within myself, as it has been with a lot of our people.
But a lot of them sneak off me or in the corner on the playgrounds and be talking their own language. Sometimes they might get caught. When I went 2 years in South Dakota school, you had to pray just as soon as you got out of bed before you dressed. Got your bed all up and you said some more prayers. And you went to breakfast. Usually went to church first. Then the breakfast you prayed, and after breakfast you prayed, and dinner the same way, and then lunch and noon the same way, and dinner the same way. You prayed until you got in bed at night. And a lot of them kids, you know, some horsing around or something, would be a sister there with a big long stick and go up and crack them one, you know.
In fact, I think a lot of young Indians are interested in this now. A lot of them are trying to relearn their languages that have been lost and some of their clan traditions and so forth. And they're learning it from a group of old people who are disappearing very fast. So they kind of have to get that information together now and do it quickly.
During my travels around the country, I stopped off at a number of different reservations across the country, visiting people and just, you know, roaming around as a teenager and having fun also, you know, when I could. The education that I received from that was that our reservation wasn't the only one living in those type of conditions. It was spread all across Indian country.
So he came out here and lived with us out there. And he stayed around here, Portland, I guess, for several years.
Well, actually, when I first time I moved up to Portland, I was looking for some Indian organizations to get involved with, but there wasn't any in Portland at that time. But when I had moved up to Seattle, I first started getting involved through the Indian Center and through other Indian organizations right there in Seattle, Washington. I started getting involved with the Indian people on Frank's Landing, the Puyallup Indians down there who were protesting for their fishing rights. We organized a group of people and occupied what was called Fort Lawton at that time. It was an army base that the army was abandoning and wanted to sell it to the city for $1. Well, under treaties in Washington State, any surplus land that's government no longer wants or is going to use is supposed to automatically revert back to Indian people. And we tried to get it for that purpose. We wanted to build a university on our college, a cultural center, and different Indian programs. The end results was we did, first I should mention that we had the majority of the citizens of Seattle, Washington behind us in our efforts because they were saying we got enough parks and we can't take care of the parks we got now, and et cetera, and give it to the Indians, you know. But anyway, we were given 15 acres out of it. Bernie White Bear, who's still there, who still runs the organization.
Leonard, like many of us here in the community, the Seattle community, were involved in a lot of different planning efforts, looking at ways to enhance and introduce services to the Native American community, which were not here before, and made our interests known to the city. We were referred to the Bureau of Indian Affairs for a resolution of our concern of our receiving part of the property, and we determined that the only way we were going to get any real visibility and headway was to actually follow what the brothers and sisters on Alcatraz had already done, and that was to physically occupy the property, and that's what we did. We came together in 1970, and on March 8th, we physically moved on to the property here at Fort Lawton. The Seattle Indian community and Leonard played a significant role and very committed to the community's causes and joined us, and all of us were, everybody that was involved basically were arrested, and we would be released, and we eventually ended up with a 20-acre site for a perpetual use, and that then gave us the land base that was necessary for this community then to forge forward and continue to develop other programs off this location for the social and educational services of people, and we concentrate here on the cultural and educational aspects and recreational aspects of the needs of the Native American community.
It's really quite successful. They're involved in quite a number of different Indian programs and issues. During that period, there was a number of different reasons that caused me to get involved and join the American Indian movement. At that time, there was an elderly man named Raymond Yellow Thunder that was a ranch hand in Gordon, Nebraska, which is right on the border of the Pine Ridge, Oglala Lakota Nation. And he had come to town like he did all the time. Well, he'd go out there to the ranch, stay out there 3-4 months, come into town. He would give his money to his sisters who would pay their bills. He supported them, right? And whatever he had left, he would buy some clothes and he'd drink it up, you know. And he was picked up by, I believe it was 3 young men and one girl. They had first humiliated him by stripping all of his clothes off him and throwing. They were having a dance that night at the American Legion, and threw him inside of that dance hall naked. And the mayor that was there and the chief of police put a blanket on him and told him to get back to the ranch, or they all knew him around there, right? Or they would arrest him and stuff like this, right? Well, a short time later, Raymond was observed being forced in a car again by these same young people, right? And the following day, his body was found with cigarette burns and other means of torture. And he was dead.
Yellow Thunder death, and AIM came in to talk to him to help. So when they come in to ask for help, that's when Dick Wilson told him, get the hell out of there. That he didn't like long-haired people. And AIM, that's when it all started then.
Go! Okay, just again to interject, Dick Wilson was the chief of this reservation, and very much, from my understanding, very much a person who wanted to enrich himself, wanted to embrace, Western value, whatever you want to call it, and basically make as much money as he could. And he created 2 groups within the reserve. There was the traditionalists who just wanted the normal life they've always had, and then well, I'll let them tell you what they were called, because it's pretty fucking stunning.
When we seen that they weren't going to do nothing but just let another murder go by, pass, without anybody being arrested.
The Hare brothers did the very same thing when they killed Yellow Thunder. Now, we went to Washington, D.C. and demanded that it be a federal crime to kill Indian people. And they said no. And so when a white man hunts down an Indian, takes 2 days to plan it, and hunts him down and brags about it.
Again, to slap the Indian people in the face. The older guy got 2 years in prison, but the other 2 got probation.
If we had a business, could we go kill a white man?
Can you imagine?
Took a beating.
Can you imagine getting probation for murder? Like, how is that even a fucking thing? That's fucking horrifying.
White man hunts down an Indian, takes 2 days to plan it, and hunts him down and brags about it.
Again, to slap the Indian people in the face. The older guy got 2 years in prison, but the other 2 got probation.
If we had a business, could we go kill a white man? Sat in that bar, took a beating from Bad Heart Bull, and claimed in front of witnesses, at least 10, that he was coming back to fix and kill Bad Heart Bull, of which he did. That's premeditated murder.
hands down in front of you. Get up!
I wonder if this is the serving or the protecting. I'm just asking questions.
Probably back in the 1972, there was what they call a Trail of Broken Treaties. A lot of Indian tribes started from the West Coast, and they traveled by car, caravan to Washington, D.C. And a lot of, from Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle area. And then a lot of Indian people went there. So then the BIA would not meet with them. And then they just turned them away, and then so they took over the building, BIA building, and to bring attention to them, the cause.
We started a peaceful protest, but again, because of, I don't know what reasons, what the reasons were, I guess totally disrespect or hate of Indian people. We were immediately attacked by busloads of Washington, D.C. police, and a peaceful sit-down, it really was a sit-down demonstration, turned into a very violent demonstration.
The Trail of Broken Treaties, which occurred around election time in 1972, involving the occupation of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the government was very upset about that. The CREEP, the Committee to Re-elect the President, was very upset about that. Amongst the things that they were upset about was the fact is that here were Indian people raising very legitimate grounds and treaty demands right at election time, which didn't go very well with the Nixon people, as well as documentation that was found inside the BIA building showed a forced sterilization program of Indian women between the ages of 18 and 25, which had in fact resulted in about 1/3 of all Indian women in those age groups being sterilized. The government granted amnesty to people, got them out of town, but then there were rumors that approximately 30 people were targeted for some kind of action. It was a few weeks later that 2 plainclothes Milwaukee police officers attacked Leonard Peltier in a restaurant and then charged him with attacking them. According to the girlfriend of one of the police officers, Bellanne Guild, when she testified in 1978, she remembered her former boyfriend having a picture of Leonard Peltier and talking about how he was helping to catch a big one for the FBI.
They just got done lying to us again in Washington, D.C., right? And said they were going to investigate, and of course they never did anything. The chiefs of the Frank's Fool's Crow and the other chiefs and headsmen made a decision that some kind of demonstration or something to bring the attention to the world of the plight of the American Indian that was happening here in the United States in the 70s, right?
In 1972, when the civil rights organization had started up, I thought when I hear a child wanted to
She said that in 1972, the people here on the reservation got together and they had the American Indian movement to come down because of the situations that were going on here on the reservation.
Dick Wilson, who was the tribal chairman at that time, had organized his own private police force.
The goon squad was essentially anybody who was employed in the Wilson administration, anybody who was working. And like I said, the issues essentially were economic, and basically that's how I guess people tended to divide themselves. And also there was differences, there were philosophical differences, because at that time we were making great strides in moving the tribe into the 20th century, so to speak. Then on the American Indian movement side, there were some traditional people who believed that we were selling out our traditions and customs and culture and stuff like that in order to make those strides.
Between 1973 and 1976, the FBI was funding, was arming, was equipping, was providing intelligence information to a Contra-type force on the Pine Ridge Reservation called Goon Squad. They called themselves that, the Guardians of the Oglala Nation.
The people were concerned, and they invited AIM to come down and...
The entire reservation is an armed camp.
It has grown from the hatred that has developed between AIM and non-AIM people. The hate has developed to the point where every man, woman, and even children. I seen in Pine Ridge a 12-year-old carrying a .22 rifle.
At the present time, I am still the chairman of this Oglala Sioux tribe, and I intend to be until my term is completed in April of next year.
Well, they never really done anything to me, but I just pitied all the people. And so that's why, because all my family was all with the goons, and I was only one. But I felt sorry for all the Indians that wouldn't fight back or stand up, and that's why I was there with AIM.
If any Indian is physically abused on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, the American Indian Movement is going to declare war on the Bureau of Indian Affairs.
The American Indian Movement and the Oglalas and other Indians from numerous tribes across the country occupied the Wounded Knee area for 71 days.
When the AIM came in, we had our first meeting at out north here at Calico. Then they decided to go into Wounded Knee, so we went into Wounded Knee. Before we got there, everything already got into the store and everything. We didn't get a thing.
Shooting have been bad for several days already. I mean, real bad. It was just constant, and you just didn't go outside. And they had a bunker. It was up the road going toward Manderson, and there were some trailer houses up there, and we were up there. The radios were just going on our scanners. You could hear they're talking back and forth, and then they were calling in on the radio and said somebody got shot up there. You know, it's almost like you anticipated that something really bad was going to happen, because it had been bad already for days. I mean, that was like the worst time ever. A lot of shooting went on all the time, but that was really bad then.
On our way out, they picked us up, took us to jail. Wouldn't let him go to the bathroom. Next morning, they got us up early. Didn't even let us wash or anything. Handcuffed us and put us in a bus and took us up to Rapid City. And that's why they sent all those charges up there. Drunk driving and breaking and entering and carrying concealed weapons.
So the program against AIM intensified, especially with Wounded Knee, especially with the incident at Custer. The government made massive arrests around Wounded Knee. Some 500 some odd people were prosecuted, of which they only got 12 convictions. So it really reflects upon the realities of the use of the criminal justice system for political purposes in this country.
The Oglalas don't like what happened. And if the FBI don't get them, the Oglalas will.
What do you mean?
Just what I said. We have our own way of punishing people that way.
Shooting on the reservation?
You said it. We'll take care of them.
Dick Wilson was, just like a Gestapo. He just ruled the whole reservation and didn't pay attention to anybody, didn't go by the rules or policies, constitution.
Because the greatest enemies of the traditionals, in one way, have been their own people who have made it into the white world and who are, and you can't blame them either. There's been so few benefits for Indians, and they have to share it with the traditional people, and there's never been enough to go around. So they see these people as kind of a threat to what they have established, you see. And there's no reason why an Indian person should be, or a part Indian person should be Indian or not Indian. It doesn't matter how much Indian blood you have, you're either Indian or not according to your, whether you follow Indian way or not, or to the degree you do. And this is a matter of choice, and it's not a question of one person being better than the other. But there has been a pattern, often encouraged by the tribal council leadership, to make the culturated people, the ones who are Christians and so forth, the elite, and they often have more money and so forth. And these other people are considered more primitive in some way. Well, it isn't true. The reverses also could be argued.
Under the Indian Reorganization Act, we're supposed to have a self-government for all the people. But I guess in order to control things, he had to use power.
And he just run that whole tribal office. He had goons all over. And he paid them big salaries. They didn't do nothing, no kind of work. And he just spent, you know, federal monies the way he wanted to.
My family's been harassed. I've been harassed. I've been threatened. But the only thing I can say is I'm still the tribal chairman here.
And if they could work together and make allowances for each other instead of always being at each other's throats. Now, we are famous in this country, and all colonial or neo-colonial peoples are the same. We just set one group against the other. Always advances our interests, so it suits our purposes.
It's always been the case with Native Americans. They've always tried to push them into reservations, take away their traditions, make them Catholics or Protestants, make them citizens against their will of the United States by an act of Congress, take away their land, as they have done to the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Used to be the Great Sioux Reservation. That was an enormous body that was to endure as long as the grasses grow and the river flows.
I imagine he got some kind of kickbacks, is what happens. Yeah. He gave away 1/3 of the Oglala Nation to allow them to strip mine for uranium and on the Sheep Mountain Range in South Dakota. Yeah.
Well, the government has been doing a very interesting thing in this area for much of the last 100 years. It has told the Lakota that by the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1868, this is Lakota land. It has also told the white population that under the Homestead Acts, this is white land. And it has told both peoples that the other is trying to take it from them. And this has been very interesting because especially in the last 20 years, where this has really been encouraged a great deal, red and white people are pointing the fingers at each other as trying to take the land from each other, all the while the multinationals are very quietly coming into the area and claiming the region for themselves. Multinational corporations that came in here during the early 70s would include Union Carbide, Westinghouse, Burlington Northern, Chevron, Conoco, Decker Coal, Exxon, Kerr-McGee, to name a few.
These treaties are hopelessly out of date. Most of the treaties were signed at the time when the area that was populated by Indians was a wilderness. It was before reservations were established. It was before the federal money started flowing to Indian reservations, and they simply have not been brought up to date by the Congress. And that has contributed substantially to the problems that we have faced in the state of Wisconsin. And unless Congress changes its attitude, Wisconsin's problems are going to spread as more tribes become more militant and as the extremist elements of more tribes end up saying, let us stonewall the feds, let us stonewall making agreements with the state, and we'll cut you a better deal with better money simply by being irresponsible.
To give you an idea of the magnitude of the profits that are being talked about, there are approximately 4 million acres constituting the area known as the Black Hills. One of the gold companies that is currently strip mining the northern hills has requested an expansion of some 800 acres onto what the government calls Forest Service land. According to corporate records and announcements, this 800-acre proposed expansion in the next 10 years, this company, Brome Mining Company, states that it will take approximately $3.5 billion worth of gold from this 800 acres. So if you figure that you can mine at least half of the Black Hills, which is what the geologists say, for gold alone, so approximately 2 million acres, and 800 acres would produce $3.5 billion worth of gold, it gives an idea of the magnitude of the economics that we're talking about in this area. It really puts everything into place and makes everything more understandable in terms of why the Pentagon would be directly involved in an isolated area of this country against a small group of people who the corporations felt were a threat to their multi-billion-dollar operations.
I guess the difference between the American Indian movement and the tribal government in terms of issues probably had more to do with economics than anything else.
So they had a lot of heavy mineral, oil and gas at the Pine Ridge Reservation. That's right next to the Badlands. Black Hills is very sacred to our people, but yet they want the minerals from there. So all of these issues came about. They all interlocked, interweaved. And so, little history thing, back around 1874, I believe, General Custer took an army caravan to the Black Hills, and he took some geologists with him. Saw a lot of minerals, best grazing land in the world, a lot of timber, everything. And this is, so with this, they wanted this for more reasons than one. So so this here led again to the Indian tribes. So mainly the Oglala tribe, right next to the Badlands, right next to the Black Hills, caretakers of the Black Hills, biggest tribe, Crazy Horse tribe.
Leonard's issue is so much bigger than just one person. The Indian people are symbolized in Leonard Peltier. He represents a struggle of people at the root of which is the land. That's the struggle between the Indian and the non-Indian world, or corporate America and the Indian people, is the land and the exploitation of that land.
At the time that the American Indian movement was investigating a lot of land claims, it became clear to us that there was some negotiations going on for a huge portion of the reservation with the national parks. And as it turned out, our suspicions were correct that almost 150,000 acres. As it turned out, more than that. We thought there was about 100,000 acres of land that was being negotiated to give away in exchange for rights and privileges. And I believe that Wilson thought that he was leading in the right direction. We fought against any kind of transfer of land.
And yet, as we know, it's been cut down, and the very day before the shootout here, another part of the reservation was taken for uranium land, and many people believe that the shootout was deliberately arranged to take off the headlines the taking of more land from what was once the Great Sioux Reservation, making it now even smaller than the 2 counties it now occupies in South Dakota, and taking people's minds off that and arranging a shootout. They didn't count on 2 agents being killed, but that was the stakes they were playing with.
In 1975, the same year as the FBI recognized that for the first time that a goal of the American Indian movement was to halt strip mining and stop exploitation of the earth, the government declared AIM to be one of the most dangerous organizations of the country and switched its operations from simply a counterintelligence program to a counterinsurgency program, and in fact issued one of the most unique position papers that has ever been issued by any government agency in this country. And that was a paper that was entitled FBI Paramilitary Operations in Indian Country. It was essentially how the FBI was going to deal with AIM in a paramilitary fashion. It included everything from the role of the White House in handling paramilitary operations within inside the borders of the United States.
Paramilitary operations by the FBI against American citizens. Cool story, bro. Like, who thinks this is a good plan?
We know that this was done April 24th, 1975, approximately 2 months before the firefight. Within a month later, the FBI, quoting the documentation, began a massive buildup of personnel on the Pine Ridge Reservation, including people such as Special Agent Jack Kohler, who was brought up from the Denver Division. Kohler was a counterintelligence agent out of the Denver Division. He was also a SWAT team member, and most of the people brought in were SWAT team members.
You know, the more I think back and the more I read about the FBI and its inception, that its prime function always was to handle political dissent. I really think so, more and more.
Because even now I feel it, you know, if you go into town or, you know, what's happening, you know, there's a lot of stuff that we go into town for, like meetings and stuff, you know, they'd all be there, and I don't feel comfortable around them. I try to be friendly and stuff, but I don't feel all that comfortable. I don't know if I'll ever forget the things that happened when they were, you know, with the FBI's and the goons.
I believe that's right. I think the murder rate probably was around 60. I know it seemed high to me at the time, and I don't recall during the 3 years that I was there if it decreased or not. My sense is that it did decrease while I was there.
The American Indian movement was asked to send some people here in 1975. I think it was around February when we came up. At that time, when the call came into us, well, I was in New Mexico at that time.
While we were there in Farmington, we were concentrating on the 15 Indian people that were brutally murdered, mutilated and murdered right there in Farmington. Some of them had their heads bashed in, some were just outright mutilated. That's the reason why we decided to have a convention there. End results of that was three or four teenagers was arrested, got a year or two of in a juvenile reformatory. For 15 murders, I think they served something like a year in the reformatory. But from that request from the Oglala's, a number of us who had already been living there on Pine Ridge and everything else made a decision to go back to Pine Ridge and show our presence, and hopefully we could do something about the terrorism and the killings that was going on. We had a camp out there on the Jumping Bull Ranch where we all stayed out there. We had a sweat lodge out there, and we had some teepees out there. And some of the things that we did while we were there was helping build. We wanted to help build up the economy. We knew that we had, in order to survive as an independent nation, we'd have to have our own businesses and, you know, something self-supporting. So we started planting large community gardens, and we helped build some businesses. I mean, structures from the ground up.
It was kind of tense because the American Indian movement did go to Pine Ridge, or came to Pine Ridge from, went to Pine Ridge from New Mexico. And there was an awful lot of American Indian movement activity. And I also recall that because of that activity, the FBI at the time increased the number of agents on the reservation to do their job. There were probably 20 to 35 people living in tents at Tent City. And it was their home, and it was all part of their movement. The American Indian movement leaders lived there, and that was their headquarters.
The traditional people, the old people, they were really concerned about their safety and the safety of their people, you know, so they wanted someone from the American Indian movement to come in here and that would be willing to stay here and live here and be a part of the community, and not just come here and stay for a little while and take off and go somewhere else. They wanted people who would commit themselves here. So Peltier and myself were the two guys that gathered other people around us, and we came up here, and we came here to stay.
And on June 1st, because the killings and the terrorism was still continuing, the Oglala chiefs wrote a letter to the State Department telling the State Department that because they cannot receive any responses from any law enforcement agency, the United States government, or any of its agencies, that as of June 1st, they were now going to start organizing to become a sovereign nation again.
We knew that there was a large buildup of people from the American Indian movement, and we just didn't know what we had, and it was just a reaction to that. We didn't know exactly what was needed.
There was a lot of observations of people on the reservations out in the countries, out of the communities, wearing fatigues, Army military fatigues. On the reservation borders, there was a lot of mobilization of armored personnel carriers.
I think we were in and out of martial law at that time. We were placed under martial law about 2 or 3 times. I think each duration had lasted about maybe from 2 days to several months. But at that time, you couldn't enter or leave the reservation without producing identification stating your business. And I think there was even curfews to where all the roads were shut down.
We know from FBI documentation that 3 weeks before the firefight, FBI inspectors from headquarters in Washington, D.C. and Minneapolis Division headquarters were given a tour of the Pine Ridge Reservation, an area around Porcupine and an area near Oglala. And they were shown an area that purportedly had bunkers. And in the words of the FBI, these areas were exclusively occupied by members of the American Indian movement. And the government talked about the need to assault these areas. The government, with paramilitary forces, the government talked about the need to use armored personnel carriers.
They couldn't find a gun.
It's like someone just took a shot at us.
Let's get out of here.
They just took a shot at us.
What had happened on the evening of the 25th, the 2 agents went out in, I think it was in the Ambassador automobile, and they were looking for Jimmy Eagle. One of the places they went to was this Jumping Bull area, Jumping Bull Hall, Jumping Bull compound. They went to that area and they were looking for Eagle. They talked to people there and were told that Eagle had been in the area, but that he wasn't there now. He had been riding in a red vehicle, and they might find him in a red vehicle. They were accompanied by some BIA officers.
Well, they claimed they were there for looking for Jimmy Eagle, but they were there the day before that, and they were told that Jimmy Eagle was not allowed on there because he was a drinker and a troublemaker, and that he was not allowed around that area, and not to come back.
Went back the next morning after talking to 3 or 4 young Indians that were in the area. Went back the next morning and with this warrant, they'd been told that a red vehicle, that he might be in a red vehicle. And while they were at the Jumping Bull property, a red vehicle leaves from the area they were in, goes down through an open area, down to a river-covered area, and they follow it.
I think and there is some evidence indicating to this that it was a planned assault.
We know from a map that Kohler had in his briefcase at the time that he was killed, that he had the Jumping Bull, he had a map of Pine Ridge. The area around the Jumping Bulls was circled. It had bunkers written on it. It was mislabeled the Wallace Little Senior Ranch, which is actually on the other side of the highway. So what we have is documentation which shows that the government was planning a paramilitary assault on exactly the area in which they did, on June 26, 1975.
And of course, when they got to about the middle of the field, the other vehicle with 3 people in it, 3 men in it, got out, brought out weapons, heavy weapons, long-range weapons, an AR-15, which is the civilian side of a military M16, an M1, World War I and Korea type, and another weapon, and started shooting at them. And they are in the center of this open area.
That next day when it came down, I was down into the camp, and I heard some shooting going on up over by the ranch house. At first I didn't pay no attention to it because there's a dam close by there about a mile away. I used to hear shooting there. We used to hear shooting there every day. Somebody used to be practicing or with automatic weapons. We think it was some of the goon squads. We don't know for sure. But at first that's what we thought it was. And then all of a sudden we heard people screaming and hollering. And so we ran up there. And we see what was happening. There was a shootout going on. So I ran into the houses because there was little babies there and women and children and stuff like this here. And I got them out of there and told them to get out of there. And by this time we were surrounded, and the shootout lasted for about from about 11 o'clock that morning till about 7 o'clock that night.
My understanding is they drove in past that White House over there and went down between those hills. And they took up position right down there. All of our people were over here. The only people that were over there was Wanda Sears and her children. And no fire was coming from over there. And I couldn't understand why they didn't just pull around and drive back out, And when I thought about that, then I became a little bit concerned, about this. Maybe it was a trap, And my concern was to get these people out of here at that time.
Two of them, and one was Kohler and one was Williams, the two agents that got murdered, were traveling back onto the reservation, and they passed a vehicle which we believed to be a scout kind of vehicle, and they thought that they saw in the vehicle Jimmy Eagle, whom they had a felony warrant for, and they turned and followed that vehicle, and they were drawn into the compound. I guess it was the Jumping Bull compound, and when they got down into a hollow, the vehicle that they thought Jimmy Eagle was in, some of the individuals in that vehicle jumped out and opened fire on them. And as Kohler was trying to get back to his rifle, which was in the trunk, he got his arm pretty much shot off. And Williams was trying to tourniquet his arm, and when he did, several of those that were firing from long distance, they were taking fire from several different points, came up and just blew Williams away, and then they put both of their bodies face down, and then they were in that position until they were located, I guess, later that afternoon. I think that took place probably between 8 and 9:30 in the morning. The bodies were discovered, I think, around 11:30 to 1:30 in the afternoon.
I had gone down there, I guess, a couple hours after it had occurred. But from what I understand, prior to the actual shooting, the two FBI agents had a federal warrant that they wanted to serve on the occupants of one of the houses. They had approached the house, and I believe that the occupants of one of the houses had opened fire on the car. The FBI agents continued to drive down past the house and down below where the corrals were, and then there was a little, I guess a little meadow that was boarded on one side.
The cars were right down there, and the front car was kind of parked this way, and the other car was pulled in like that. They were parked like that, kind of, so that they offered some kind of shield, I guess, for the agents.
But then the word spread through the camp that there was shooting going on at the Jumping Bull house. So a number of us grabbed weapons and went up there to defend our people.
They just stayed there. They didn't, we knew they were shooting at us. We could see them every once in a while pop up and shoot, and then they would disappear behind our cars again, And to this day, I don't really understand why they had the opportunity. Nobody was trying to stop them from going out. They were trying to stop them from coming in here further, So I know, why they didn't leave that day, I can only speculate on, I feel, I think my belief is that they knew that they had a lot of backup. We found out later that there was a 10-man BIA SWAT team that had been trained by the FBI. They were just a little ways away from here.
The government very quickly began surrounding the area as soon as the first shots were fired, and began a massive buildup of FBI and other law enforcement personnel, mostly SWAT team people, from the very beginning of the firefight. The firefight lasted till well past midnight, And that was one of the reasons why the FBI withdrew its forces that day. At the end of that day, there were 3 people that were dead. 2 FBI agents and Joseph Stotts.
After we got away from here, we went over to Rosebud. That's the next reservation over east of here. And I think it was around September 5th when I was arrested there. The FBI came in there on early one morning at daybreak. And I was living in a little cabin behind Al Running's place there. And Andy May was living in a tent there at that time. They came in and they arrested me and they arrested Andy May at Al Running's place and took us to Pierre, South Dakota.
The general investigation that followed, I think, was probably as intense as the FBI has ever done in its history. You know, the defense are correct in that. Obviously, when agents are murdered, that's given the very top priority, and it was. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of agents working on the case, which is one of the problems. They stumbled over themselves. There are too many agents working the case. There's too many agents doing too much stuff. They literally did stumble over each other's feet. They created so much paper that none of us as trial lawyers could keep track of it. That's part of the problem that we wound up in the end. I mean, there was stuff that we didn't even know existed. And that was part of the problem of working as intensely as they did, is they created so much stuff that nobody could truly master it, and none of us did.
I think that initially, because of the fact that we had a lot of our SWAT people there, and we didn't know what exactly we had. They had the APCs there, and they had a lot of equipment that the military would use. It appeared that way. But once we realized what was going on, we immediately got rid of that part of the investigation, and we got back and put the guns away and got our pencils out, and that's what we do best.
Yeah, when everybody was arrested and everything, and plus under the advice of some of the headmen and chiefs that I should perhaps go to Canada, you know, and you know, because there was a lot of terrorism from the law enforcement agencies now on Pine Ridge. In fact, because of this, all the Sioux nations, plus other tribes, got together. This is the first time since 1876 that all the tribes got together and demanded that the FBI and their other law enforcement agencies get off the Pine Ridge reservation. That was the first time in almost 100 years that this had happened.
We, the undersigned members and supporters of the White Clay District Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, do hereby request the removal of all alien law enforcement personnel.
I haven't heard of the petition. We certainly don't plan on leaving the area until we have completed our assigned job here.
When Leonard was not extradited at that time, then the trial of Butler and Robidoux went forward, and the 2 men were eventually acquitted.
I stood trial in Cedar Rapids, Iowa last year on the same charges that Leonard Peltier has to go to trial up here on. I was acquitted down there. Bob Robidoux stood trial. He was acquitted. A man by the name of James Theodore Eagle was indicted on the same charges. Charges against him were dropped in September of 1976.
I felt very relieved that when Bob and DINO were found not guilty, because I knew we were not guilty. And I never really believed that I would be found guilty.
According to FBI documents, the FBI blamed the acquittals on rulings by Judge McManus, that he let in evidence that the FBI was responsible for the climate of fear and terror on the reservation.
And then Peltier was convicted before Judge Benson, I think a year later, or maybe 8 months later, I forget.
They had a different judge, different jury. It was back in Indian country, mysterious transfer of the case, and he had a judge who was totally anti-Indian and who made rulings which were totally different than the judge in Cedar Rapids had done. And I think that militated for a conviction. So I think he was somewhat at a disadvantage compared to us in Cedar Rapids.
Well, I think that the judge had a lot to do with that personally, and that's my personal opinion. Judge McManus's approach was to allow Mr. Kunstler to present anything and everything as evidence in the trial, or at least his position. And I don't think Benson did that.
But, you know, I suspected and knew that I wasn't going to receive a fair trial or fair anything to happen with the legal system, judiciary system. When they produced affidavits from this woman named Myrtle Porbear that she was my girlfriend and she was an eyewitness and some other stuff that she said. This person I've never met in my life. I knew something was wrong then. I says, well, you know, the only thing we can do is for me to fight extradition here as hard as I can and try to get a promise out of the United States government that they would give me a fair trial. That was one of the reasons for fighting extradition.
Whatever is said in those affidavits, in my judgment, as I indicated by not calling her as a witness, once I had all of the evidence together, Myrtle Porbear was not a witness. She was not present and was not a competent witness.
So essentially what happened is Peltier at that time made a serious strategic blunder. Instead of simply voluntarily coming back, he resisted and forced them to extradite him. Well, what happened in the meantime, Robidoux and Butler go to trial.
And as the theory changed over time, because in the Butler-Robidoux case, the theory was that there was a pre-planned ambush of the agents. Well, that didn't work too well in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, so some 7-8 months later, the ambush theory was dropped, and it became that the agents were killed because Leonard Peltier knew that they were coming after him on an old warrant, and that therefore he killed the agents to keep from being arrested. So basically what the government did is they suppressed anything that was inconsistent with their case, and only several years later, through the Freedom of Information Act, were we able to come up with the documentation which in fact showed that the only evidence that arguably directly connected him with the deaths of the agents was a fraud.
Well, the trial was a long, hard trial, about 5 weeks. When we got all through with it, we wound up with no eyewitnesses. There were no direct testimony to I saw Leonard Peltier finish off the agents. We had basically tried it on a kind of a combined hybrid theory. Our main theory obviously was that Leonard Peltier had gone down and personally executed both agents. I mean, there's no question that. That was our main theory. But we hadn't proved that, and we knew we hadn't proved it. And so we argued it to the jury quite simply as, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we think he did, but we know we didn't prove that, but, you know, we think we've convinced you that he did. I mean, we think the circumstantial evidence is enough to suggest that. But you don't have to believe that, because to commit murder, you can commit murder equally by aiding and abetting in it. And we knew that we had 5 or 6 or 7 shooters. And we knew that we narrowed it down to a small group, of which Leonard Peltier was the oldest. He was clearly the leader. He was the one, even their own witnesses established this. He had been invited into the area. He was the one. He had brought the others along with him. It wasn't the other way around. We knew that.
The remainder of the prosecution's case against Leonard Peltier, taking away the ballistics, is simply that which was the same as Robidoux and Butler. There is no difference. They were acquitted. He was convicted because they fabricated that evidence by having an FBI agent, a ballistics expert, a firearms identification person, perjure himself, despite his report, and then hide the report so the perjury would not be apparent.
So we've got bullets hitting the car over where we think he would have been firing from. Everything lines up right. We've got him seen by the bodies. There's only 3 people that ever, by testimony, ever placed down there. And that's Robidoux, Butler, and him. Now, nobody says he zapped the agents. We haven't got anybody saying that. But we've got basically a piece of circumstantial evidence which is almost as damaging and that's this shell casing that's injected into the trunk. What that basically tells us is quite simple. That shell casing is not an unusual shell casing for an FBI agent to have. A 223 could very well be one of their own weapons. So it doesn't mean much of anything until it matches up with something else. When it matches up with a weapon that the FBI could not have had access to, it tells you that that probably was one of the murder weapons.
What I want to show you now is a bolt from an AR-15. This is your ejector. This is your extractor. Here is your firing pin. Firing pins on an empty brass, when it strikes your primer, leaves an impression in there, which is very identifiable. It's just like a fingerprint.
What the Evan Hodge testified on behalf of the government that essentially after he had finished examining casings and weapons that had been received from every other part in the country, as well as from the scene, he then went to the casing that was supposedly found within 10 feet of the agent's bodies, compared that casing to extractor marks that were on the casing that was found supposedly near the agent's bodies, compared them to test-fired casings from the AR-15 from Wichita, and claimed that there was a match. He testified that he could not and did not do a firing pin test on that AR-15 from Wichita because the weapon was too badly damaged from the fire and explosions of the vehicle from which it was seized. According to documents we obtained under the Freedom of Information Act, Evan Hodge committed perjury when he said that he not only could do a firing pin test, but he in fact did do a firing pin test back in October, not in February, where he claimed that he made the match through extractor marks, and that the firing pin test conclusively showed that that weapon was not connected to the scene that day. What we have here are two different handwritings pertaining to .223 caliber casings with the K-40 rifle, which was the AR-15 from Wichita, and a third handwriting on this page.
Well, what Evan Hodge did, he did misspeak at the trial. It was a sort of polite perjury, because he said that only two people, he and an assistant by the name of Joe, had worked on the comparison of the shell casing, which was the only crucial evidence against Leonard, different from the Cedar Rapids trial. And when he went back into his back room there at the courthouse after he had been on the stand for a number of hours, he met Joe and said to Joe, yours was the only signature different from mine on the reports, the only handwriting, and therefore there were only two of us. Isn't that so? And Joe surprised him and said, no, that's not my handwriting at all. It was handwriting on the crucial report which led to the famous telegram or teletype of October 2nd that it couldn't have been Leonard's gun. And he said, no, that's not my handwriting. And they discovered there were three other people who had worked on the comparison at the FBI laboratory. So he had to come back in and say he had misspoken, and that there were other people, and they would endeavor to find those other people for us.
According to the ballistics evidence, and we're talking about the casings that the government actually turned into the laboratory, because it's clear they were selective, there were at least 3 AR-15s that were linked to the scene that day. Well, at trial, the government argued to the jury that there was only one. It's contrary to what their evidence showed. It's contrary to what the Court of Appeals found that the evidence showed.
The theory of the government's case from the very beginning was one of aiding and abetting, that there were more than one individual, even though Leonard Peltier was the leader, that there was more than one individual that was involved in the killing of the two agents. And you're guilty of murder if that is proven. The government does not have to prove that one single individual did all these events, or even that he's the one who fired the final shot. I think the evidence ultimately proved that he was the leader and that he was a key shooter, and that he was, where the rounds were found and the types of rounds and so forth, that he was a critical shooter in the death. But this was the theory of our case from beginning, and this is a very common theory, that if you are an aider or an abetter to the crime, then you're guilty of the crime.
Well, the prosecution changed and flip-flopped on who was the murderer. In the Fargo trial, it was all Leonard. He did the killing. He was the executioner. He had murdered the agents in cold blood with a high-powered AR-15. When it got to the appellate level, it was all changed because they knew of the significance of that teletype saying it couldn't have been Leonard's gun. And therefore they changed it to an aiding and abetting theory, which was not the theory that went to the jury. And now they said that they didn't know who shot the agents, who killed the agents, but Leonard was with the group that did, and therefore he was an aider and abetter and just as guilty. A complete change in theory necessitated by the revelation that it really couldn't have been Leonard's gun.
I mean, essentially what the October 2nd teletype said was that the weapon that the government told the jury was used by Leonard Peltier to kill the agents, in fact, could not have been the weapon that was used to kill the agents. And in fact, what the government therefore did was knowingly present false evidence to the jury. In post-trial surveys with the jurors, it's real clear that this was the crucial evidence that was against Peltier. And upon the determination of the Court of Appeals, this was indeed the crucial evidence that was used to convict Leonard Peltier. It's interesting that today the government has changed its position. In fact, once we got the October 2nd teletype, which showed that this physical evidence was indeed a fraud, the government immediately changed its position and said that it didn't prosecute Leonard Peltier as the person who shot and killed the agents, but essentially prosecuted him as an aider and abetter. This argument was also rejected by the Court of Appeals. We did not have the October 2nd teletype. We did not have anything which would have shown that, in fact, Evan Hodge was committing perjury in trying to claim that there was, in fact, a definitive link between the AR-15 from Wichita and Leonard Peltier and the scene.
Leonard was not granted a new trial despite all these revelations because it was a political and not a legal decision. The FBI pressure has been intense in this case. They indicated that they were even going to drop the prosecution of one of the young men who was indicted but never tried, Jimmy Eagle, because they wanted to, as they put it, drop the full prosecutive weight of the federal government on Leonard Peltier. And they were told in the field, develop evidence that will tie Peltier in with this crime. And so what really happened essentially was that the appellate courts, who know something is terribly wrong, that's why one of them wrote in the opinion, as I've never seen in any other appellate opinion, we are uncomfortable with our decision. If this had been a supermarket robbery and a couple of clerks had been killed, he would have gotten a new trial. But when you substitute the victims for clerks, read FBI agents, then you find that they have to have somebody whom they can pin these, what they call murders, I call homicides during a shootout, but they could pin those two corpses on.
Well, Leonard's case is important to us in Congress because the Constitution is very important too. It's the bulwark of our civilization. And when we see something take place in the third branch, the judicial branch of the United States, it was established by the Constitution, where we think that something should be done over again, like a new trial, then we are very interested. The loss of liberty unnecessarily by one individual American is very important to all of us in Congress.
I don't feel that I've done anything wrong on June 25th. I don't think that anybody that was in our camp that day, that fought that day, raised a rifle. I don't think nobody done any wrong that day. We done no more than what any of our people would have done to protect our people. You know, Crazy Horse done the same thing when Custer attacked the camp there in Little Bighorn. You know, Chief Joseph done the same thing when he was trying to lead his people to Canada. We never done no wrong. I had no doubts in my mind that if I had done any wrong or not that day. I believe that what I did was right, that anybody else in the same situation would have done the same thing.
There's clear evidence that he was innocent. The evidence was fabricated and distorted, and as you know, he was extradited from Canada on the strength of false and fabricated affidavits, which the government was finally admitted to say were false and fabricated. He was denied a fair trial by being transferred back into Indian country from whence he had been removed, along with Rubidoux and Butler, because essentially they thought the juries would be unfair. And then mysteriously back from Iowa by a process we don't know yet what happened. Neither does the judge who was to try the case in Iowa, Judge Edward McManus, and who had tried the Rupert de Butler case. And he was sent back to be eaten up by the wolves, to be tried before a highly prejudiced judge, some of whose rulings were later reversed in other cases because of anti-Indian remarks. And he was just a victim to a need for someone to have the mantle of guilt on his shoulders for the deaths of those 2 FBI agents.
Did you kill the agents?
I did not kill those agents.
I had the distinct impression he was telling the truth, but I couldn't count on that mathematically. What I count on much more is the behavior of the local Pine Ridge Indian people around him. The way they speak of him now, I just know, knowing those people, they would not speak of him the way they do if he had really lost his head, been a non-warrior, panicked, and blown those 2 agents away like that. They really love him. They love what he did for them. They love the fact he stood up for them. He's a genuine hero to them.
An aiding and abetting conviction. Like, I don't know how these people sleep at night. I legitimately do not know. Something to additionally consider. If we look at Leonard Peltier on Wikipedia, he's still alive, born in 1944, has been in prison since 1977. So he is still in jail. Maybe I'm a ridiculous libertarian, socialist, left-leaning prick-ass, but how is this allowed? How is this okay? And I know the answer. The answer is honkies, of which I am one. But like, this is just disgusting to me. I have never been more embarrassed of the way that people can treat one another than I am when I dig into these, especially this particular time in history. Because remember, I think it was the 1970s that, like in 1970, I could be wrong, that Fred Hampton was killed. Next week's documentary, which will be on Tuesday, we're going to be talking about watching a movie called Lord Thing, which is about a street gang that evolved into a political power, also in Chicago. They were the corporate vice lords, and it was a group that Sugar wants to discuss, but she's driving. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon, except for maybe for a smoke, and if I do, I can probably bring my phone with me. And if you want Sugar, yeah, I'm happy to wait 10 minutes. If you want to, I'm also happy to get you on Discord, and we can have you like chat with your mouth parts instead of just typing. That's up to you if you're comfortable with that. To me, there's just the case of Leonard Peltier is just another example of law enforcement at that time, and not that it's changed. I don't want to in any way give the impression that, oh boy, are we ever better now? It's been 50 years. God, it's been 50 years since, almost 50 years since the case of Leonard Peltier. We have this habit of being as fucking awful as we can. And I don't understand it. I don't like it. AIM, in the documentary, they mentioned that the U.S. government referred to AIM as like one of the most dangerous groups. And that's why the FBI had to come up with paramilitary strategies and things like that. I don't see that. I certainly see them being a threat. But the threat that they posed was not the good kind of threat that, from a government perspective. What I mean by that is the threat that they posed was they were engaged citizens wanting to do things for the improvement of their people, wanting to stand strong against corporate interests that were destroying their owned land. They were trying to protect people from the abuses of groups like the Goons, or the Goon Squad as they were called. Hey kid, how you doing?
I'm alright, how are you?
I'm alright. I don't see that as particularly, dangerous criminality. But if you look at the way that the U.S. government treats those people, and it's not just, like you could easily point to Ruby Ridge, which was a fascist, the Waco, Texas, which was the strange cult of David Koresh. It's not just minority people, but it's pretty often it's people who are not white. In the case of both Ruby Ridge and Waco, the government, in my opinion, doesn't get a pass because that was those were both flag-waving ceremonies for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Essentially, Clinton had come in on a huge sweeping gun control platform, and the ATF, which was essentially a horribly underfunded former component of the Secret Service, suddenly had leadership in place that were amenable, or so they thought, to the mission of the ATF. And so they wanted to capitalize on this. And they, attacked, I wouldn't say innocent people, but I wouldn't say, in much the same way as so many of these stories, I wouldn't say, dangerous terrorists or anything like that. Ruby Ridge, maybe. I don't know enough about that one. I know the guy was like fashy as all fuck, and I don't have any soft spot in my heart for that shit. Koresh was, I did a paper on this in college, and I actually thought it was going to be a slam dunk. I was like, yay, obviously, crazy religious nut goes nuts and government saves the day. That was one of the first times I really immersed myself in the alternative narrative and realizing that, we got sold a bill of goods that didn't fit. I will never defend David Koresh as a good person. He was a crap sack. I can't speak to any of the other people that died there, but if you read into the incident, it's fucking terrible. But all I'm saying with that, and the only reason I brought it up, is because the government doesn't get a pass. Almost exclusively, when we see these kinds of attacks going on against citizens of that country or of this country or whatever country by their government, it's not, they're so fucking common to experience and just say, oh, hey, look, it's people who aren't white being attacked by the government. In the history that I was taught, and I don't remember the particular words they always use, but if white people killed a bunch of Indians, that almost came out of my mouth in the just how I learned these things in back in the day. If white people killed a bunch of indigenous people, that was like a victory, or we fought a battle. If the shoe was on the other foot and the military dudes lost, or the RCMP or whoever lost, then it was a brutal slaughter. Never, the words matter, right? One is a brutal slaughter, one is a military victory. And I've seen photos of those military victories where you have all of these dead women and children, and I think to myself, is that what a military victory looks like? Because it looks a lot more like Miley or whatever the name of the place is where that Vietnam War dude went completely shit kettles and like murdered everyone in his path, just indiscriminately murdering women and children, and was tried for it and I believe convicted, but yeah, I'm off topic. It's National Indigenous Awareness Month, and I have been trying to understand more for a lot longer than this month. I know that I grew up in a society that very much painted pictures that weren't very accurate of Indigenous people. I have Indigenous friends that I love to pieces, and they are absolutely not the story massacre. That's it. Thank you. That it's always the massacre at whatever, you know, and when we do it, it's like, yeah, well, there was a skirmish. But yeah, the people that I know are absolutely not the image that I had built into my head. And it took a long time for me to get through to myself and to be like, oh, turns out I'm a fucking idiot. Turns out people aren't what I think they are. And began to question my own assumptions and my own understanding of things. So that, you know, that's why I read Treaty 7. I live on Treaty 7 land. I had no idea what was in the treaty, but I read it and did so on stream so that hopefully some other honkies like me can hear what I was saying, hear the words of the treaty and my take on it as I was doing a little bit of, yeah, I agree. Everyone needs to read it. Or specifically every honky needs to read it. You know, I think everyone needs to read it, but we as the honky folk kind of need to not be terrible fucking awful people. Yeah, we're all treaty people, and that treaty governs anyone who lives in this territory that, you know, where we live in Calgary up to Morley and you know, down to the, I think almost to the, is it to the border? I don't even know. But yeah, we all live under that treaty. And that comment that the capitalist prick dog said, he's like, you know, these treaties, they were written a long time ago and, you know, they're outdated. Are they? They're outdated in the sense that, you know, when I read the treaty, what are the things that struck me the most? And I knew this ahead of time because I had mentioned it in passing with one of my friends, Norm, and I had said something about like the $5 per family yearly allotment. And I just made the mistake of assuming that would be like adjusted for inflation. But oh fucking no. They still give you $5. Like, here's a shiny fiver. Thanks for being an indigenous. Like, that's just fucking crass. How you doing?
I'm alright.
Good. My son just got home, and him and his hooligan friends were out carousing and drinking beers and socializing. Don't you know how to live stream? Anyways, and 10 pounds of flour. Yeah, and you know, like if you understand the where the world was at that particular moment, some of the particulars in the treaty make sense, like the necessity for encouraging for providing agricultural tools. And that was because due to the declining buffalo population, which had a lot to do with a bunch of things, including overhunting by Métis and white folks. There was, you know, any number of stuff, but the buffalo population was dwindling, and that was the primary food source for, you know, or at least primary protein source for people in this area, the Blackfoot Confederacy. So they had no, you know, like their food source was going. they were coming to the table saying, yeah, we'd like to learn some of this whole agriculture stuff. We've never really done that here. And the treaty is very clear. Like, we're going to give you some plows. We're going to give you some stuff. We're going to, show you how to use it. And then we were like, maybe later, and didn't. Soldiers mad murdered them too, so we would be dependent. Yeah, I totally. I don't know for sure or not, but are mass murdered. My understanding is that's the case. When I was digging around, all I could find was very honky things that were like, the Métis did it. And I was like, I feel like there's a lot more. It's not like just, 3 French-Canadian indigenous people showed up and were like, let's kill all the buffalo. It is very good, Pierre. I feel like that's a whole sack of bullshit. And I can do that accent because I'm Canadian, and hating the French is part of our culture. Or at least French Canadians. I'm just kidding. I don't hate anyone. But I do love making fun of the Quebec accent. I think it's really important. Oh, apparently I just received a request to recover my Facebook account. Is that real? Let's find out together. This email comes from security@facebookmail.com, which is valid. Didn't request this change. If you didn't request a new password, let us know. And that... hopefully I'm still on Facebook. We'll find out. I don't know. We'll find out. Sorry. I only like one, and he's Taylor McNally's partner. Lol. That's one good Frenchman. Yeah, you know what? When I first met him, he didn't sort of strike me one way or the other. He seemed a nice guy, but he's just grown on me. Don't touch email spoof. I don't think it was, actually. I think, like, looking, because one of the first things I always do is I look at the to from stuff. Oh, you know what I didn't do? Yeah, the link address looks like it's actually, it's to facebook.com. I don't think this was spam, and it, yeah, if it wasn't, well, oh well, someone's hacking my Facebook right now. It's probably some nasty white nationalist, and he's gonna be like taking photos of me and making me a cuck man or something. Cuckity cuck. Yeah. Anyways, I got to know JF sort of slowly, and just good man, just a good man. Everything I know about him is phenomenal. So, Sugar, are you home? Are you done the driving? Because, like I said, if you want to, rather than typing, I can bring you in through Discord and we can have your voice and potentially your face. I don't know for sure, but I've never done that with the Discords, but I feel like I could accomplish some stuff. It's fucking warm today, and my arm, which has basically been fine, parking lot, just dropped off my mom, I can type, I'd rather be behind the screen. Totally understand. And I thought you might say that, but I wanted to give you the opportunity. Sugar, you had some stuff you wanted to specifically say, or I'm happy to give you a chance to type some stuff out that you want to talk about, and we can chat. One thing I will point out is my understanding is there actually is some people in Calgary who are working on a group that is affiliated with the American Indian movement. So to my indigenous friends, please consider finding out some stuff about them if you don't. I said most of what you were thinking, the narrative. Yes, there are a few groups. Oh, there are a few groups. La Corazon set me up with somebody, and I was hoping, that's actually why this is Wednesday, is they have a drum circle on Tuesdays, and I certainly was not going to be like, well, why don't you cancel your drum circle, because but I had sort of said, if you're free and you want to, you're welcome to join in on the chat, and I don't believe they had the opportunity, but that's okay. Mostly I was hoping that they'd be able to be like, this is where you should go. And I got a friend request. Don't feel like, it's probably one of them sex friends. I love these. It's a, oh no, this is a guy. It's a, what's the translation? Yeah, no, this is just, this is actually kind of fun. I get a bunch of, like almost every day I'll get like 6 or 7 horribly bad requests to befriend people who are all like, I have a WhatsApp and I want to show you my body parts, and I'm like, yeah, no, I don't think so. Yeah, the Crazy Indian Brotherhood is another group. I don't actually know much about the Crazy Indians. I had always thought that they were a motorcycle gang, but that is probably because, you know, they're indigenous and they have bikes and therefore are clearly, you know, running guns and murdering people, because that's obviously the only leap one could make. Yeah, I found rewatching this the other night, I got really pissy again. And it happened tonight as well. Just the idea that there can be such a remarkable security support, community service, volunteering, that's what they do. Yeah, that's so terrorism, basically, according to, you know, the way we view people who are not white who are doing security support, community services, and volunteering. That, yeah. I just find that it gets me angry because, you know, when I was a kid, I was all full of piss and vinegar. You know, I'm old now, and I'm now just full of, I guess it's just vinegar, or maybe just piss, I don't know. But I had this belief that the world would be a place that could be reasonably wonderful. And it seems like every time I get caught up in that thought, a story like Leonard Peltier's comes up in my universe, and I go, oh, right, we're garbage. We're fucking garbage. I am Canadian. You're turning into a cranky, curmudgeoning old man like we all are. Not all of us. Some of us are cranky, curmudgeonly old women. And some of us are cranky, curmudgeonly old non-gender specified. Just kidding. I'm being pedantic on purpose. I know, what the hell, my mom is now more punk anarchist than I am. Leonard Peltier, Black Panthers, political prisoner. Yep. Absolutely, you know. And like I said, you know, we're going to watch the Lord thing next week on Tuesday. And it's a phenomenal movie, too. Another documentary about, set in a similar time, that, again, shows a U.S. government commitment to, you know, stamping out hate by hating and stamping hard and not actually stamping out hate. But and I asked in the chat earlier, I was like, why is it they never do that with the Klan, right? Political power, politics equals power, power equals status quo and money. Challenge the status quo and get a response. Yep, absolutely. Sugar says her grandma's like, burn it all down. Fuck yes. I have to tell you, this is probably not an acceptable thing to say, but when I saw the headline that said that Catholic churches in the Okanagan had been set on fire, I was pretty okay with that. The more I think on it, the more I'm convinced racism is just table stakes. It's about demonstrating power. Yes and no. There's this whole class reductive thing that we can get into where you look at class as the ultimate thing. And I've gone down that road. I've had those thoughts and conversations. Because there is truth that the wealthy, powerful elite have always used the police to enforce the status quo, and poor white people who essentially are in no better straits than non-white people who are poor. But they use the poor white people to terrorize and scare the poor non-white people. And they just keep patting us on the back and going like, don't worry, Jimmy, one day you're going to be one of us. I just knows it. And I, as the dumb hick, go, oh, gosh, we'll go punch me some minorities. So, watch and get in line too. Automod knows honkies in spaces too. So again, honkies watch and get in line too. Oh, Automod. I don't even know like what my options are here. I'm gonna allow both of those because if Twitch comes back to me and they're like, you know, how could you use the word honky? And I'll be like, well, I'm a honky. It's our word, and I'm fine with that. Yeah. So now you can say without spaces. I got in trouble on someone else's Twitch thing, and it was a similar situation. This guy Rob Knorr, who is a debater, who's a right wing guy, and he actually, I have to give him more credit than I had previously done. He actually isn't a terrible debater, but he loves to do what I think of as a gish gallop, and I refer to it because he's this great malding right wing dude. I was like, yeah, it's a hick gallop. And I got in trouble with that. Poor honkies. You know, won't someone think of the honkies? That's the thing, right? So when I say that class isn't the final answer, like that seems, it almost seems like it is because the power structure is designed to keep rich whites on top, everyone else at the bottom, and use white people at the bottom to terrorize non-white people at the bottom. But in actual reality, class, that's why it's not the class is the only thing, because there'd never be a time where the whites at the top would say, you know what, we need to stop supporting the whites at the bottom who are our little, you know, hate dudes. Let's support the blacks at the bottom instead, or the indigenous at the bottom. That never happens. Race always comes first, and race is always the underscore for all these things. It doesn't mean that people can't surpass race. You know, Colin Powell is a good example, and people will often trot him out and be like, "Oh yeah, well, you know, Colin Powell was a black man, and he's wealthy, and he's powerful, and he was, you know, at the top of the military, and you know, all that kind of stuff." That's great, you know, but he is the black friend that they all have. I'm not saying he's like a token. Obviously, he's a very exceptional military leader. He was able to lie to the UN and convince everybody to blow up Iraq. You know, I'm not taking anything away from him. He's clearly a shitheel of unimaginable power. But that doesn't mean that his blackness didn't affect him in those halls of power. And political prisoners or racism allows the dog whistle to work. Look over there, and not think about what's going on. Most people are naive and ignorant and unaware. Absolutely. How much can you give them without actually help them? Let's give them hope. Yeah, totally. And that's the difference right there between poor whites and poor non-whites. Is poor whites get more hope, because they actually believe that the tyrants in power are going to, you know, just make it rain on them. You know, if you're just you know, hardworking enough and shitty to the right people, you'll make it in this world, Timbo. And Timbo goes, oh, goddamn, I'm gonna get me a stick and go beat some coloreds. And when you get aware or something uncomfy, like, I don't know, 215 graves in Kamloops or 4 years in prison Peltier, it's hard. I don't know what you mean in that I'm Canadian. It's definitely, I'm going to drink the high test beer when UCP gets going. Yeehaw. Yeah. I got the text message the other day from the Canadian Conservative Party going, can we count on your support? And I was like, fuck no. And I gave them a long speech that no one ever reads. There's a segment of the population that is afraid. Oh, absolutely. And I get that. I get the fear. I get, like, you know, the church is burning down is a good example of that. And I get that there are people who are just totally out of, like this is not something they understand. They're not involved in that conversation. And then they see, churches getting burned down and they're like, oh my God, this is real. This is terrorism. And they are scared because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. When one of the things I've had to come to grips with is my own discomfort when people use words like settler to describe me, or colonizer, or alabaster. Yeah, those words suck in a certain sense, but I eventually have to, had to come to the understanding that wasn't necessarily about me. It's more about the people who are either actively working in that, actively supporting it, or actively alabastards, or actively blind to the whole thing and dripping with their own privilege and things. Another one today they figure over 700 in unmarked graves. Oh Jesus! The last residential school to close in Saskatchewan. I didn't realize that the province with the highest number of residential schools was Alberta. So we will probably have the largest number of unmarked graves to have to explain away. The Canadian government apparently is giving I think a fairly sizable amount of money, but with the expectation that the provinces are going to have to put funding in as well. And there's an expectation, which I don't know if Jason Kenney's going to live up to, that Alberta has to put a bunch of money into this as part of the Truth and Reconciliation stuff to investigate these. And this, at least I hope that's true. I mean, I don't fucking know. I can't believe anything Trudeau does or says. I can't believe anything Kenney does or says. So we'll see. I'm so sorry to hear about that 700 bodies found. That's fucking disgusting. And people keep saying, like, it's estimated that there's like 4,000 people that were killed. And I'm like, no. That's what white people estimated. If you take the indigenous people and their stories of, this band had 200 people over the course of this length of time who went to the school and never came back. And they never got an answer besides, I think they ran away. Yeah, sorry. It's a lot more than 4,000, and I think we're going to be hopefully embarrassed into action. That's my genuine hope. I hope that's what comes of this, is that we are embarrassed. Yeah, 150,000 stolen children, half came home. That doesn't mean 75,000 people were, murdered by a system or anything like that. But I feel like 4,000 might be a little low there. Might be scraping the bottom of the barrel. The other thing, and this is a horrible thing to say, and perhaps tone deaf, is that on average 50% of the population is below average. That's a true statement, right? We had more industrial schools here for older kids by the end. I'm not familiar with industrial schools, but is that like, because my dad taught at Van Horn, which was considered a secondary school, and they did a lot of, and they had a large indigenous population, but not exclusively indigenous, but it was a lot of like, they used adding machines, and they had like a really good baking program and things like that. It was a high school for kids who, what they called back in my day, they called the dumb kids. It was like a vocational school. Is that what we're talking about with an industrial school, or am I not sure? Yeah, they're your stories, not the government's. Where they teach wood, building, machining, farming, etc. Now, I don't know, as I said, this is a thing I don't understand. Are the industrial schools like a variation on residential schools, like people were taken out of their homes and brought, or is the industrial school more of a attempt to sort of, provide a more usable education, or is it equally racist thing that's like, well, y'all can't do high, complex, hard things, so we'll teach you how to wood shop. I don't know. To train older boys to be slave labor. Yeah, see, I read it and I was like, oh, that sounds good, where they teach wood building, machining, farming, etc. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds good. Wait a minute. The Canadian government did this. There is no fucking way that this is going to be so good. Work for food and accommodation. So serfdom, which, realistically, we're moving steadily towards being a serfdom just because of the cost of living in this fucking world right now. But certainly, like, what we're talking about here is taking older boys out of their traditional environment and their home and their family, learning them up in handy, workable ways so that we can put them in poverty and have them keep the lights on for themselves and all that kind of shit. There's definitely no fucking way WRT training them for good paying jobs. WRT? I'm not sure what WRT is. But yeah, I find, the more that I have learned and the more that I've dug in, when people say, oh, the treaties are outdated. Have you read it? I bet you haven't read it when you say something like that, because that treaty actually is pretty clear and pretty reasonable. And I see nothing about the actual concept of the treaty that is outdated, aside from the fact that we, the status quo and the corporations are like, well, yeah, but we want that, all that space you're on and all the things that are in it. So it's outdated and you have to get off now because we're here. And that's fucking grotesque. And chemical castration to keep them out. Yes. And that's one of Canada's, I'm sure it's not just Canada, but that's one of Canada's huge scandals that doesn't get talked about a lot, was the chemical castration, particularly of women, but I think also of men, in the case of women, to keep them from reproducing, obviously, and in the case of men, as you say, to keep them mild. What a horrifying concept that anyone would ever be like, oh, you know what? Here's an idea, and we have a problem with this group of people. And we could look at the problem and look at the socioeconomic realities these people are living in, and the history of depression and like generational PTSD and all those things. We could fix those, or just cut their balls off. It's a lot easier to cut balls. Like, what the fuck is wrong with the world? What? Seriously? Anyone who comes up with these solutions, like, I can understand, some terrible fucking corporate training outing thing where you're doing a team building exercise and you're brainstorming and someone's like, castration, and they're like, okay, there's no bad ideas, write it on the board, Jerry. But to make that like a thing that you then do is fucking terrible. And there's no salvaging that. There's no like lighter side of castration. Wrong. Now, and I say this as someone who both has been fertile and now, because of surgery, is not. But it's a different thing. I wasn't chemically castrated. I just got the old snippety dippity. They gave the men vitamins. They actually ripped out women's wombs. Oh, yes. Not to take away from the point, and I will jump right back to that, but for the men who are listening, I was just talking about the vasectomy. If you're ever thinking to yourself, I don't really want a vasectomy, maybe I'll get my wife to have a hysterectomy, you need to read up on what the process is for both of those things, and then execute yourself as a traitor to your whole fucking world. Just get a fucking vasectomy. Don't put someone through a massive, major surgery. My vasectomy happened in a doctor's office. Don't be a bitch. All right, sorry. They gave the men vitamins. They actually ripped out women's wombs. Fucking gross. Well, I'm thoroughly pissed off and must needs log off and chill out so I can sleep. Good night, everyone. Good night, I am Canadian. A pleasure as always. Sorry to poop all over your night. My ex-husband got snipped, took half an hour. He went to work the next day. Yeah. You know, I was tender. I had newborn who liked to stomp on my nads. It wasn't a great time, but the way to think of it is if it was you that had to make the choice, and this is exactly what I did. I looked at it like, okay, so if the doctor said to me, Jim, there are two things we could do. Number one, we could give you a literally like non-surgery surgery where it'll be uncomfortable, you'll smell bacon, that's about it. Or two, we could admit you to hospital for like a week, give you a, you know, full sedation process where, you know, you don't know if you're allergic to the sedation, you could die on the table. That's always a significantly statistically significant possibility. And you could get an infection, you could die, like, you know, all of these horrible things. And it's a major operation to just completely like go inside and pull out your testicles, and you know, that would be that. If it was presented to me like that, I'd be like, well, obviously, hook me up with the bacon smell. Yeah, it seriously was a bacon smell. I was lying there and I was like, that smells good. Oh, that's me. It was really bizarre. But yeah, like if you take out the idea of it being somebody else having the surgery and like make it yourself having the option of the two, you would never choose the other one. So don't make your partner do that. Yeah. Oh, my arm. It's mostly better, but I say mostly because it's not actually all the way better. And it seems like this couch may not be the most posturpedic thing on earth, which I know comes as a huge shock. But yeah, when I sit and do these, I'm like, starts off with the massaging. Have you ever got cupping done? You offering? Cupping, as in like where they warm the little thing, like suction things, and they put it on your back. Yeah, Chinese thing. I think it was done like, but not like a full-on cupping experience. I was there for a massage, and the woman was like, you know, doing that as a part of it, but it wasn't like they weren't staying on. I wasn't bleeding through my skin and all that shit. I'm super not a fan of cupping. I think it's like really pseudoscience-y and dangerous and also quite a bit gross. So I'm also like, I'm not an expert. I haven't really, you know, put any thought into it, but it's never been on the radar of things I would do. I did like acupuncture once, and that process it reminded me just too much of chiropractics. Yeah, I have no faith. So for the record, there are absolutely legitimate chiropractors in the world doing legitimate chiropractic work. And that legitimate work would be if your chiropractor is like, you have a sore back, and you go, I have a sore back, and the chiropractor goes, here, and you go, oh, that's better. There is such thing as having a sore back, and such a thing as having like your shit's out of whack, and they can go, and you're good. But my problem with chiropractors is so many of them are like, asthma, we can cure that with some chiropractics. I'm Dr. Kevin. Fuck off, Dr. Kevin. You are Dr. Lion-ass Shitbeard. And if you weren't a fucking chiropractor, you'd be a youth pastor. Dr. Kevin. Who the fuck would call themselves Dr. Kevin? Seriously. Yes, you may bum a cigarette. Parenting. Maybe. Do I have anyone? They're on my bed.
Thank you.
Don't touch nothing. Yeah, so I'm not a big fan of... you can get pinched nerves from misaligned bones. Absolutely. And when my actual non-quack doctor, as opposed to the quack that I saw, who was like, you have leprosy. When my doctor is back, I will go and see him. And I imagine that he's going to go, like, you know, put me in a sleeper hold and go, and I will suddenly be like, oh. But what made you laugh so hard? What part of that was the best? Was it when I gave myself the sleeper? Or was it the fact that he said I had leprosy? Or He didn't actually say I had leprosy. He said I had pneumonia, but fucking idiot. So I'm not sure when my doctor's back, but when he's back, I'll go see him, and it'll be much better. I feel like I want to go for a smoke. Let me see. Do I have this still set up? I got a new computer, and I don't know if I have, like, my sneaky can use the phone process. I don't have that. I will take 1 second, and I will fix this. I will work this out. First, I need to... I'm going to go to my Discord server. I'm going to stop looking at that. And I'm going to go to the general. Join with video. Now, theoretically, I'm on there. And if I go now here and I say, how do I want to do this? I want to do a window capture, which means I need to be running Discord. I am probably running Discord. Sorry, give me just one moment. I will figure all of this out. Oh, fuck. I can't do this. What am I doing? I'm so fucking stupid at life. Okay, go to that channel. I see. Can I see the channel? No, that's not what I wanted. That's not what I wanted at all. For fuck's sake. Okay, maybe I'll just use OBS Ninja real quick. That's what I'll do. Okay. You know what? Fuck it. I'm just gonna go for a smoke. I'll be back in like 2 seconds. You know what? I can join on Twitch so that you'll just see this, but I'll be able to chat if people want to chat. Speaking of which, did I miss anything in the meantime? Okay, you smoke. I'm gonna drive home. I'll be like 8 minutes. Okay, cool. That works. I'm pretty sure that like Sugar, you're the only person watching right now. No sound? Am I not making noises with my face? It says I'm making noises. Or are we talking about Discord? Am I on Discord and not making noises? What the fuck is going on? I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Okay. I'm gonna mute my mic for 1 second and just see if I'm making noises with... Oh wait, it's like super quiet. Why is my mic super quiet? The fuck just happened? No. Oh, I bet by opening Discord, it like tried to take over my mic. Okay, 1 sec. Audio. No, my mic is the Sure mic. It's making noises. Why am I not having it work? That's fucking weird. I'm gonna like completely shut off Discord. Let's see if that makes a difference. It's super quiet and I don't know what the heck. If I do that, it's a little bit better, but it's still super quiet. I didn't change anything with you. What the hell, computer? Okay. Is there anything under properties? No, it says it's the microphone. Settings. I don't know what the fuck is going on there. I'm going to do this and it'll give me some microphone, but it won't be perfect. No, that's not even a microphone. I was wrong. There's no microphone on my webcam. Fuck, I'm having a good time. Alright, get rid of that. Go with this. And now there should be, there's that, and is there another microphone desktop thingy that's moving? No, what the fuck? I have no idea what just happened with my audio. Weird as fuck. Is it like... test for this device. It's on. Okay, maybe I'm gonna turn it off and then turn it on. We'll try that. Audio. And now it should be fixed. It's not fixed. I don't know what why it's so quiet. I don't know what the hell happened all of a sudden. My mic just decided to like suck.
Turn down maybe, like manually?
I don't think there is a manual.
Is that a rotor there?
No. I don't think so. Maybe it is. Is it making better noise? No. No. Maybe if I like, where's the button thing? One of these things is a button. Somewhere's a button. Okay, I'm just gonna pull it out so I can see. What is the fucking deal here? That's right. Check, check. Oh, now it's, yeah. Apparently it was the microphone just decided it would be stupid. All right, looks like it's back. Well, yay. All right, and on that note, I'm going to go for a smoke. So... yes, I pulled out stuff to make for dinner, but I didn't have time.
Okay. How do you feel about like gnocchi?
That would be great.
Okay. Probably not gonna do the meat just because
That's fine.
it seems too loud on the podcast and everything.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I should mute the mic while I'm out for a smoke so people don't have to listen to Okay, back and microphone fixed. Everything's good. And now all I have to do is just I blew the wrong direction, but it was cute anyways. Got them good had a smoke coughs. Those are the best kind. Sugar, you're back. Children are here. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. That's the worst. I swear next time I'll have my cam set up properly, my phone cam. Let's see, list is up to date. I'll have to wait a second for it to refresh. Hey, Nate. Nate's on. I didn't see him, but hey, no hope for the Nate. How you doing, buddy? Hope you're doing well. Yeah, that was a heavy movie to watch, I have to say. It was really good, but definitely heavy. Why is it still? It looks like it's still being quiet, but it's louder than it was. Maybe if I click the little clicker, it'll be better. There we go. That seems to be improvement. I don't know. Something's weird with my mic today. It's just the luck, I guess. So, Sugar, since you're the only one chatting, is there anything else you want to chat about? If you listen carefully, you should be able to hear the underlying hum of my amazing refrigerator, which goes all the time. It's pretty sexy. I'm not gonna lie. When you got all this, life was good. Oh hey, I'm wearing an Iron Tusk shirt. Everyone should go listen to Iron Tusk. When I did my last DJ set, actually, I got sent from Carlin, who's the drummer for the myriad of fans who are watching who are not familiar with them. I got sent a MP3 or a WAV file of their most recent song. I should play that. Like tonight, because it's a rad song, and Iron Tusk is an awesome band, and you know, it is somewhat fitting to promote indigenous artists on a thing where you want to hear? Do you want me to play it? I'm gonna play it. I'll play it. You say yes, and I'll start playing it. Yes. All right, I just have to find the email here, because yeah, it's in an email. All right, is it playing? No, it's not playing. Play. Oh, that's playing out of my fucking computer. My mic is picking up.
Twist
So yeah, that is unreleased music by Iron Tusk that I got sent. You'll check them out. Link. Let me grab that for you. I'll put it in the old chatto boxo. I'm gonna give you a link to their Facebook. Copy link address. Where's my chat? There it is. I will paste. So yeah, this is shit. I just got warned by Nightbot not to post links. Fuck you, Nightbot. I'm the goddamn owner of the thing. I thought Nightbot was off. How do I do that again? No. What do I do? Oh, I'm so bad at all of this, like using Twitch business. I can't remember. Well, Nightbot will just be a thing. Anyways, it's facebook.com/ in all giant letters, Iron Tusk Sixiga, all one word. I learned a lot in a short time streaming. It's true. I'm very, very, moderately competent at this now. And I'm getting better. I keep learning new stuff and trying new things. You can see it. You just can't click on it, I think. Yeah, Nightbot is an example of things I was like, ooh, this will be good. And I wanted Nightbot specifically so I could do all like the cool things that other channel owners do, where you have like, you do shout outs and stuff. And I was like, oh, that'll be awesome. But of course, I put zero effort into it. I just sort of turned it on. And then it was like every time anyone, and this happened to I Am Canadian a bunch, he'd send me links in the chat. And it would be like, oh, don't post links. And I'm like, but I want that link. Come on. But I guess if you're like not a completely tiny, small streamer like me, then you would probably not do that. You'd have all your links in, Discord or something. May you comment on my physicality? Yes, absolutely. As long as it's, not like I want to physically punch you in the nose. Yeah, go for it. Go for it, sugar. My belly looks smaller. I have lost weight. I would love to tell you that I lost weight the healthy way of like commitment to exercise and good diet. My diet's not terrible, but the truth is that especially when the weather changes like this, I tend to not eat a lot in the warmer months. And in the cooler months that were preceding it, I was a little bit on the poor side, so I wasn't eating as much. And so I have definitely lost some weight. I also have been exercising, although since the pinched nerve thing happened, I have not been exercising at all because it's sort of, it's not awesome. You're like, but yeah, I'm always going out in the nice weather. I miss going out so much. I love going out, and I keep wanting to do things. Like, I've got my second vaccine. I keep wanting to go for, like, walks in the park again, and I'm just, there's a block in my brain that I'm, like, terrified of the outside world right now, so I'm not there yet. Hopefully that comes soon. I definitely, when COVID started, I put on a lot of weight, and it was all, like, right here, which is the worst thing ever, especially when your world has suddenly become Zoom calls, and all your camera angles always like your chin is at the wrong and everything's pushed out, and it was just fucking gross. Really comfortable not being around masses of people. Me too. I genuinely miss like small gatherings and things like that, but I've never been like, I remember I went to see the headstones at some, I think it was that shitty casino bowling alley thing that's down in the south, where they used to have Stampede Wrestling. Frank Sissons I don't know what the fuck it is, but yeah. I went to that and I was like, you know, the band is playing and everyone's happy and I'm just like, I don't like being here. I don't like this at all. Yeah, the Silver Dollar Action Center. That's it. Frank Sisson's Silver Dollar Action Center. God damn. Yeah, fires and stuff. I miss, you know, gigs at Vern's. I know that, you know, I've been able to sort of limp along with hosting the DJ nights and things, but and those are, you know, super small turnout, like, you know, 5 or 6 people over the course of a night kind of thing. But I miss those shows, like not the necessarily the big shows with all the people, but like that show where you're there with 30 people and there's a band just killing. Miss that so much, and I'm looking forward to that coming back. But yeah, every time when they're like, we're reopening the economy, and I'm like, you can. I'm gonna stay the fuck back here for a while. My company's going back to work, slowly but steadily, and so, you know, probably by September they'll be like, Jim, come back to the office, and I'll be like, yay, it's super neat to be here, yay. I don't know, and it's weird because like I miss all this stuff. Are they making you go in all the time? So not initially. Initially, it's just like executives and management that are going in, and I won't be allowed to go in unless there's a real need for it. But as they open more and more, theoretically, I will end up going in. Interestingly, they got rid of the floor that I work out of, so I don't have an office anymore. Like a desk or a computer that's there. Like I have my work computer here, and there really hasn't. I don't think they've thought about the fact that like there are a bunch of us that just don't exist in the floor plans anymore, and I don't know. I think the whole thing is stupid. Why wouldn't you work from home? Like, it's, if you own a business, and IBM did this. IBM's very smart in this regard. There are like thousands of IBM consultants in Calgary, and they have an office tower, and it's a small office tower, and the whole purpose of the office tower is either you're working at a client site or you're working on work for IBM, and if you're working on work for IBM, stay home, work from home. Always has been this case, like not always, but for a very long time. And the office is intended for if you need a hotel station that you can show up at because maybe you've got company or whatever and you just not to be in the house, or you have a meeting and you need a boardroom, like it's exactly that. But their whole concept is, why are we wasting money on having giant office space? And every company for the last year has just seen the writing on the wall and been like, why do we have our workers coming in? And now they're all like, time to come back, makes sense, we're reopening the economy. Fucking idiots. I know people that are getting depressed about going in. I'm not depressed about it. I actually was in like last week and the week before one of the projects I'm doing. I have to support, well, I'm a BA. I don't fucking support anything, but I'm the one that ended up going in and doing a bunch of the work on their conferencing system, like the video conferencing. And me and the tech from the company who actually has the technical chops to do things. So I was in all last week and the week before. Abby says they're making us all go back on the 5th, and that terrifies me a lot. Yeah, you know what, kiddo, I get that. Like the place that you work, I'd be terrified too, because like they have not really shown a commitment to your safety in the pandemic times, aside from just saying, well, I guess we can't have you come in. And B, some of the people you work with, I can see just licking everything in the office. That's, you know, it's a hot take, but it's my hot take. They have been proven to be more effective at home and productive. We need to brainstorm other ways to fill those buildings, use the space. Oh, fuck yeah. It is, and I have an idea just off the top of my head. Let's stop having people live on streets. That might be a thing. I'm not in any way opposed to repurposing that space and just saying, you know what, you know, like you take one of those towers and you say, we'll have like 3 floors that are, and you turn them all into like tenant-based spaces, and some of those spaces are reserved for people who are not working, and the rest are reserved for people who are. You know, so it's, you know, like there's people who currently are unhoused and people who are not. And there is amenities like the, you know, say the top 5 floors, you've got boardrooms and whatever else. And so your tenants can say, you know what, I have to have a meeting today. I'm going to book one of the rooms up on 17 and I'll go in and have my meeting there, and it's, you know, private and doors locked and shit. Like, why not? Why not? Why are we wasting the space with empty office? Transit is going to be hell too. We got COVID the second we were allowed to work from home. Whack. Yeah, transit's going to be... That is something like I've kind of been isolated from for a few years because I mostly walk. But there are times when I have to take transit and fucking hate it. Healthcare, mental health, life skills courses, all really accessible. Yeah, exactly, right? There's no reason why we can't have a downtown that is thriving in a different way. It's thriving with people living there and using that space that we've built upwards instead of continuously building outwards. And use some of that space, repurpose it for playgrounds and parks for kids, that you can have like family buildings that are actually family buildings. You can have access to healthcare and social services and stuff in those spaces. I just don't understand why cities are the way cities are. It really doesn't make any sense to me. Like I just don't. Literally, I see them. You know, the city planners will get up and talk, and they're like, yeah, we've been planning really hard, and we're gonna just keep growing. What could go wrong? Like that's ever worked. It's the stupidest thing. Seems insane to have to wait months to access mental health. Oh, fuck yes. You know, and that's another thing. How will we pay for it? I have an idea there too. Let's sack the cops budget. And I'm all for the idea of doing that on a sort of a sliding scale, so that we start a little bit lighter. So because we're still gonna need to have cops, but you know, invest some money and extra money into mental health and social services and all the non-violent things that can be done, and then scale back the cops budget accordingly. But fuck, you know, having to wait for that is wrong. I can understand how COVID threw wrinkles in how we access mental health. I totally get that. But as a general day-to-day thing, our mental health is seriously in need of overhaul. Specifically when someone's in crisis. Yeah, absolutely. The money's there. Outreach is basically another form of human trafficking. Outreach is basically another form of human trafficking. I don't think I understand what you mean. Yeah, I'm not sure I get it. So if you wouldn't mind, maybe explain a little bit. I find the idea that as a society, like I believe we should be able to judge societies by our actions more than our deeds, our words. And so our actions, in the case of things like, you know, what's important, our words would be like, oh, people are important, and we love people, and we want to build a diverse and successful city. And we go, that's great, that's super awesome. How are you doing that? Well, pretty much by shutting down Black Lives Matter, throwing indigenous people in jail, and you know, voting conservative. Those are two very different things, what you said and what you did. And when it comes to mental health, like, we believe that it's a need that we need to address and we need to make available, but then we don't. Yes. They have these people, or they use these people like commodities, like outreach services. Instead of working themselves out of a job, they keep them in the system. I think I understand what you're saying, and that essentially, if I'm getting it correct, and please correct me if I'm wrong, what you're saying is that there is a mentality of maintaining service for people rather than fixing problems, maintaining problems, because that means you continue to have a paycheck. So when it comes to like human beings who are suffering, yeah, it's all well and good to fix somebody, but like, you know, can't fix them all, right? Might as well, you know, just keep the people down. And yeah, that's what you're saying. I thought so. Now that makes more sense. Yes, the human trafficking comment, because yeah, initially I was like, wait, what? I feel like we're also really bad at changing our systems, and I'm not just talking about like the big systems like politics or whatever, but at all times any system can be improved, and eventually if you keep improving it, you get to a point where the improvements no longer are meaningful, but we don't tend to do that. We come up with a system to solve a problem, and then we just sort of maintain it and we don't question it. And a good example of that is the idea of, you know, one of the 4 types of legitimate charity in this country is a charity whose express purpose is the promotion of religion. That's just dumb. I don't have a clue why anyone would think that's a good idea, but we do that. Give them enough to keep going, not all the services at the same time to heal the whole person. Keep them fractured. Yeah. I love the way that also played out with regards to, so we had, you know, when I was a young man, we had things called mental hospitals. They're gone now, but, you know, we had them. We still have them, but you know what I mean? Like, there was a lot more space for people who had serious issues and were in crisis. And then what we did was we cut back on all the funding because it's just wasted, because it's only helping, you know, loonies. And then those people, it turns out not funding those programs didn't solve the problem. It actually made the problem worse, in so much as it made it so that they were the problem of the police. And the police always handle all problems very efficiently and kindly, and so that all worked out really well. Yeah, there are so many barriers, and that's warehousing. Yeah, exactly. Rather than fix the problem, rather than spend the money to try and help people, let's just stick them all in a box, and we'll let them out every now and then and put them back in. If I was a cop, I'd be angry about that. I would never be a cop because all cops are bastards. But if I was a cop, I'd be furious about the fact that every social services, every welfare type role is now the expectation that cops have to perform it without any additional proper training and without resources. The resources they get are just bigger guns and cooler cars. I'm not defending cops because, you know, like I say, fuck cops, fuck them in their ear. But that's not cool. It's not cool. And then we you know, we turn that to the people and we go, see? This is what those people are like. That's why we keep them locked away, because they're dangerous. When in fact, most of those people, in those people words, are just regular people who, you know, are dealing with some mental health issues, dealing with some, you know, depression, dealing with who knows what the fuck, and probably would not be all that hard to deal with if they actually had services and support in place. There's that commie talk again, services and support from a government. Silly. Well, I'm afraid I feel like this part of my neck right here is about to just snap. I don't think it will, but there is a CBD/THC gummy in an alternate universe in Minecraft that my Minecraft character is going to eat in order to relax the thing. So I'm probably gonna pull the plug on this pretty quick. There's an indigenous tribe that has been occupied several times by missionaries. They try to counsel some of those people who lost family in a civil war, but they do it in a sterile setting. That doesn't work for most people. Yeah. You know, there's a phrase, meeting the people where they are, that I think is really an important and vital concept when it comes to any kind of outreach work. And I also have a real serious problem with missionaries, because missionary work comes at a price. There is a price tag attached. There is strings attached. I love the idea of noble, good people, for whatever reason, whether it's religious or non-religious, seeing a need and saying, I can help with that, and then putting their own selves in that position to do that help. I think that's a wonderful idea. So the missionary concept, I'm not opposed to. The problem I'm opposed to is the implication that so often missionary work is religious, and the work is for the promotion of the religion, or as you say, not pushing meds on people who don't want them. There's a million different ways to heal a person, and sometimes you have to dig a little deeper than just your pat answer, right? So it's easy for me as a honky from Honky Town in Honkyville to be able to just say, if you got a headache, take a pill, take a little, headache pill. That's good. When you're dealing with people who come from a different place, and I don't mean different place like physically, but I mean like spiritually or whatever. They may not have the same experience. A good example. I'm hemming and hawing, but a good example, as you say, Indian women in North America are the most overly medicated, East Indian. The example I was going to give was and I've made comments about this before. There's a video by Beau of the Fifth Column where someone had said, "Hey, give me some advice on how to, convince my mom, or my grandmother, who's a black woman, that she should get the vaccine. She won't because of the Tuskegee experiment and the way that science has betrayed, or particularly medical science, but science in general has betrayed African American people." And Beau's response was, "I can't give you that. She's right. She lived this. She doesn't need some fucking Florida cracker white boy going, well, that's cute with your whole lived history thing, but science is good. You take the pill." Really, the only way to talk about it with this woman is to say, clearly she's an intelligent woman and she's seen some things, and talk about the actual statistics and the actual impact to her life of taking this and not taking this, and hope that you can reach her. But to try and fool her into thinking the Tuskegee experiment didn't happen or wasn't a serious problem. Yes, of course, I wasn't in the middle of doing something. Let me get that for you. I have teenagers. Yeah, I really believe that you need to, any of these things, you need to meet people where they're at. You need to be thoughtful in your approach and understand that not everyone's gonna be in the same place and have the same experiences. Or Russ, the guy who had schizophrenic break, and the last is trying to get him off her street. The guy who, and that lady's trying to get him off her street. I don't know anything about that, but yeah, that sounds like if there's a guy having a schizophrenic break and there's some Karen on the phone with the police going, there's a person, and he's like, on my street. Yeah, I'm assuming that's what we're talking about. It's so fucking easy to just show kindness to people. You posted about him, he's friends with Bear. Okay, I haven't read that post. Sorry, hon. I'll have to check that out, because it sounds like something that will make me want to punch a Karen in the nose. Not that punching Karens is acceptable. You can only punch Nazis and maybe cops. Yeah, I'll take a look at that. Anyways, I'm going to wrap it up there before my arm completely falls off. She's part of the revitalization project in Forest Lawn. Oh, revitalization. The gentrificator. That fucking shit pisses me off. I'm all for fixing communities. I'm all for, and like Forest Lawn's had some really great improvements, but come on, like you can't just force every community to be just like shitty white suburbs. Yes, please do. All right, great chat. Thank you so much, Sugar. Thank you to all the people that were watching and all the people that watched the documentary with me. I'm going to go and play Minecraft, and in Minecraft I will be taking a weed gummy. Oh yeah, like, subscribe, all that stuff.